What's up, weirdos? Welcome back to another installment of Liz. Why the heck are you so dang clumsy? In this edition, I replant the litter box planter that I cracked into a million pieces with my butt. So the other day, I did something that was really embarrassing, like early 2000s slapstick comedy embarrassing. I was in my garden after watering my plants, just admiring how good everything was looking, and I was feeling super proud, and it was awesome, except just as I was about to leave, my foot caught on one of the matte tiles I have protecting the floor from getting too messy, and lo and behold, it slipped out from underneath me, and I fell flat on my butt. Not only did I fall flat on my butt, I fell on one of the planters, the litter box, and anyway, crash bang boom, I managed to stand up to see that half of my celery was on the floor. It had fallen through this giant hole in the bottom of the box that I had completely cracked open with my less than luscious booty. Suffice to say, I needed it. I needed to come up with a new planter pronto. I had managed to get everything sort of replanted, but every time I went into the garden, it disturbed the soil in the box, and more of it was just kind of trickling down onto the floor. So after a bunch of pacing around my apartment talking to myself, I finally ended up talking to myself loudly enough for my husband to hear me. And he suggested that I use one of our older laundry hampers that to use as a new replacement. And I was also considering this as an option, but I really struggle with giving myself permission to use things sometimes. So to have his blessing made me feel like it was the best option for now. I could have bought a new planter bag, but this was free and available like right now. So my first task in replanting the celery was, of course, just taking the celery plants out from the soil. And the reason I have so many celery starts is because I had accidentally dropped a bunch of seeds into the planter at the beginning of the season, and wouldn't you know it, all of them decided to sprout. The laundry hamper isn't nearly big enough for all of them, so you will see me planting some of them in our old wooden bed frame that I fabricated into a planter, but even then, I wasn't able to plant everything. So I took the rest of the celery sprouts, cleaned them off, and used them as garnish for a mole chicken and rice bowl that I made that evening for dinner, and it was delicious. So here you can see that I am taking out the soil from the existing planter, the one that's broken, and I'm mixing it with a bunch of the compost that I was able to, or that I kind of had already shoveled into the bin. Now, the bottom of this planter is full of sticks and other debris that I had kind of added in after watching a bunch of videos that said that I should have something in the bottom of the planter just to take up space and to decompose later on, whatever. So right now I'm trying to separate the soil from those other things. It's not as successful as I would have hoped, and I don't have any other like extra soil to kind of take its place. So I'm kind of doing my best to scrape out as much as I can before I kind of go into replanting some of the sprouts into the new planter. But anyway, I'm kind of like really excited about the fact that I know it's kind of sad to see, say, a plant not quite make it to where you want it to, like, not make it to the final, like, fruition. Like, you really want to, like, see it grow the whole way. But this is something that I kind of, like, really enjoy about vegetable gardening. So, like, I've had houseplants for years and years. I have a rubber tree and a small bamboo plant that I've like managed to keep alive for over a decade. And I mean, I'm not perfect. I've definitely sent my fair share of plants to the plant graveyard, but I've always enjoyed taking care of plants. But now that I've tried my hand at food gardening, I'm overwhelmed by how forgiving these plants are. So like if there's something that's not working out, you can usually just eat the parts of the plant that are still alive. So like the lettuce that I had that was really starting to suffer because it had been planted like less than ideally for the situation that it was in. I was still able to salvage enough of that lettuce or the leaves from that lettuce that I was able to make at least 3 salads. And then these celery starts, the ones that I wasn't able to plant in their planter or in my wooden planter, I was still able to take them, put them in water, get the dirt off, separate the leaves from the roots, And then I added them into my dinner, and it was delicious. There was such a really nice burst of freshness along with this really rich mole sauce that I really loved, and it was kind of awesome. um I guess I what I'm trying to get at is that if you have houseplants and you've even managed to keep one of them alive, it's actually not that hard to get a garden started. My space is tiny, so tiny that I have to do a bit of a shuffle to get around. And of course mistakes happen. Sometimes it's your butt that does the mistake, but sometimes it's you not really knowing how to manage the plant that you have planted. Sometimes you're going to fail at what you're trying to grow, and it's not always going to turn out the way you want it to, but I find that the successes definitely outweigh the failures, and then even those failures can sort of in a way turn into successes themselves. I know that these plants rely on me to tend to them, and I'm so lucky to have them because they will hopefully provide me with nourishment in the future. And then the other thing about having a tiny garden is that it's kind of forces you to keep your space as tidy as possible and to come up with creative solutions to keep things sort of productive and to see the best ways to take care of your space and things like that. Because, when I first started the garden, I had kind of planted everything from seeds into these giant planters, and I hadn't really thought about what's my space going to look like once things start to grow? Will there be too much, or will there not be enough space? Will things have enough space to live together in this little tiny garden that I made? And I was really not thinking about that when I started. And, for the longest time, I was even sort of afraid that things wouldn't grow at all. I'm growing on a veranda balcony in an apartment in Korea, and I do get pretty good sunlight. I think I have an east-facing window, so I get pretty good sunlight throughout the first half of the day, and then the rest of the day it's sort of it's a little bit shaded, but there's still light coming in. There's indirect sunlight, I guess. That's the word, indirect. But anyway, so that indirect sunlight is great. The plants have kind of done amazingly. My potatoes are incredibly big. I don't know if I'll actually get a good harvest, but just seeing how fruitful and plentiful the actual plants have sort of become is amazing. And then the other thing about having a small garden is that I really have to keep up with, making sure everything is tidy, that my spaces are clean. I had to do all of this repotting in my apartment, so I wasn't able to actually do anything out on the balcony because there just wasn't any space. So, here I have to take out the rest of the debris that was in the bottom of the planter. I will probably reuse that later. Again, it's with a bunch of other plant matter. I'm hoping that it'll turn into compost, though I do probably need to look at that a little bit more closely. And then, all of the, my old planter, I have to take it out to the garbage, the trash that day. I kept the plastic because I'll use it later. And then, of course, I'm, again, very lucky because I have, robots that actually do most of the cleaning for me in my apartment. So, yes, I know I'm really lucky, and yes, I'm really glad that I didn't have to go and scrub things on my own. I had a great time, trying to solve this problem and not, get overwhelmed with it and not turn it into a bigger problem than it was in my head. But yeah, if you enjoy gardening successes and failures and seeing how someone manages to work their way through them, feel free to subscribe, and comment on the video. If you have any ideas for maybe how I can better use my space, or if you have advice on, some plants that I might want to plant if I'm in Korea, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. And But anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is the celery that I was able to save. And it's living with the tomatoes, peppers, and perilla leaves. All right, bye guys.